Hi everyone, Freddie here, and for today's video, I wanted to go and share with you guys one of my favorite recipes, which is for chocolate cake with marshmallow cream filling and chocolate ganache. If you know anything about me as a baker, you know that I'm always on a mission to make the perfect chocolate cake. And I've experimented with so many different recipes, so this is just one of my many different kinds of chocolate cake recipes that I've come up with. I just feel like there's no such thing as a genuinely perfect chocolate cake, because there are so many different kinds. Chocolate soufflés, chocolate lava cake, chocolate sponge cake, torta de romano, which is like a dense, rich, fudgy chocolate cake, brownies. Because there's so many different kinds that I've come across over the years, I figured, there's just a time and place for each type of chocolate cake. So for today's cooking video, I wanted to go and share my chocolate balsamic cake recipe, which is my favorite chocolate cake to pair with chocolate ganache. So for my recipe, it's for the most part a pretty standard chocolate cake recipe. I don't use eggs, instead I use balsamic vinegar and baking soda, which creates a chemical reaction similar to eggs. And I use olive oil. So you normally think with olive oil and balsamic, that's the stuff that you dip your bread in at Italian restaurants. But in this case, I'm using both of those to create a very unique chocolate cake experience. The olive oil helps give the cake a fudgier texture, while the balsamic helps highlight the chocolate flavor. With the cocoa powder that I'm using a Hershey's dark cocoa powder mix. This is not a brand deal, don't worry. And I like to go and take that and toast it in the olive oil on very, very low heat. You know it's done toasting when you take the pot and just sort of like waft it towards your nose, and you can smell the chocolate aromas from there. And that's when it's done. If you let the oil go for too long, then the chocolate will burn, the oil will taste like fryer oil, and it'll just fuck up your whole cake, so do not do that. So try to avoid that. I'm trying to accomplish by heating up the cocoa in the olive oil is it intensifies the chocolate flavor that much more, while the nutty notes of the balsamic will help bring out the flavor of the cacao bean that much more. I use the ovaltine because it has a very creamy texture, and I prefer using ovaltine in water over milk just because it gives it such a nice flavor, while I feel like the milk sort of detracts from the chocolate. And then the espresso powder that I use is there also just to further enhance the chocolate flavor. I want to kick up the chocolate flavor as much as possible without having to use actual chocolate in the cake. Not because I hate using chocolate in the cake, but I want this cake to be very light and fluffy, and adding melted chocolate into cake batter just makes it very dense. Once I mix all my ingredients together, which is baking soda, balsamic vinegar, sugar, chocolate, cocoa powder, olive oil, espresso powder, and ovaltine, and cornstarch, I then take that mixture and fill it into 12 muffin tins. The reason why I use cornstarch in addition to the flour is because it makes the cake very soft. So I take out about a quarter cup of flour, and then I replace that with half a cup of cornstarch. Normally, if you buy cake flour in the grocery stores, it's about 15 tablespoons of flour to 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. And the reason why you use cornstarch at all in this process is because it has less gluten, which in turn makes the cake more tender. So the olive oil and the cornstarch help with making this cake very soft. The reason why I'm using so much more is just because I want this cake to have enough body on its own that you can pick it up and bite into it without it falling apart. Because that's what a Hostess cake type thing is like. Because it's a snack cake. You should be able to pick it up and eat it as you walk. And I feel like with most cakes, normally when you take a bite out of it, it just starts to crumble and then it just falls all over the place and makes a mess. Because I'm adding a bit extra with the dry ingredients, it helps keep it together more. And then you just bake that in the oven at 350 degrees for about 20 minutes. For the filling, and if you want, you can even glaze the top of the cake with this as well. I am making a marshmallow meringue, which is made by taking egg whites, whipping them up, then I take sugar and then bloom the gelatin powder. So you bloom the gelatin by taking gelatin powder, adding water to it, putting it in like a cold place to help it solidify, and then it blooms. Once it's bloomed, it should be like a solid block. So you take that, combine it with sugar, and then you just like reduce that with water and make it into a simple syrup. And while that's going, what I recommend doing first is you pre-whip your egg whites to make them super stiff and light. Because if you don't do that, then what tends to happen is when you add the sugar syrup into the egg white mixture, it's just gonna scramble. So I would whip my egg whites first until they're super stiff, add some normal sugar into it, keep whipping it. Once I have it to super stiff peaks, then I can start pouring in my simple syrup mixture, and then that in turn will help stabilize it even more. And I also added cream of tartar into the meringue as well as vanilla extract. The cream of tartar is there to help keep it even more stabilized. And basically, you just whip the living crap out of it. If you end up with watery meringue, that's typically because you added too much water from the simple syrup, which actually happened in my case. But don't worry, you can still salvage it. Just put it on a double boiler and whip the living crud out of it. If you were to add too much sugar, however, what I recommend doing is you just whip up another egg white separately, and then just fold that in together, and then use an electric mixer to whip it all together. And then what ends up happening from there is it will generally stabilize from that. So once you get that stiff enough, then you can let that sit, and then the gelatin will work its magic and set up the meringue so that way it'll become like a marshmallow texture. For the topping, which is the glaze, it is a chocolate ganache. So I do the same technique I did with the cake, which is taking cocoa powder and olive oil and combining it together. I also added in the espresso powder and the ovaltine just to give it the same accents. And then I combine that with water, so that way it can help break up the oil a little bit. You don't want the oil to be hot when you add in the water, or else obviously that's going to cause an explosion or like a grease fire, so make sure your oil is room temperature when you do this. From there, I take the chocolate. I first half melt it over the double boiler, and then I pour the liquid from the pot into the actual chocolate to finish melting it. And I also use egg yolks to help thicken it. And the reason why I use the egg yolks in this ganache mixture is because they really help the ganache sort of solidify around the top of the cake. That way it doesn't smear if you were to go and package this or wrap it up, making it even more kid-friendly. That way, you know, you can store it in a Ziploc and it's not gonna make a mess everywhere. Now for the actual assembly of the cakes. With a spoon, I just pour out the cake, and depending on how much marshmallow filling you want, you can take your thumb and just like press down in the middle of the cake just to make the hole bigger so you can add more filling, or you can just fill it as is. Then you take the cake part that you poured out, push it back in. Then either you can take the cake and dip it into the ganache if it's still hot and therefore loose enough that it won't pull the top part of the cake into the chocolate. Or if you want to be safer, you can take a spoon or an offset spatula or butter knife, take the chocolate mixture, dollop it on top of the cake, spread it evenly using the offset spatula, back of spoon, or butter knife. Let the ganache set at room temperature for about 30 minutes, and then voila, you have your snack cakes. But overall, this recipe does bring me back to my own childhood memories of going to a 7-Eleven and buying Hostess cakes after school, because I always craved sugar as a kid. Don't tell my mom, she'd kill me. I enjoyed filming and making this for you, and yeah, have a good day. Bye!